Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be going over two new features in TextMesh Pro. Now the first one has to do with an advanced text alignment feature, and the second one is basically a new text overflow page mode that was added to TextMesh Pro. Now both of these features were requested by one of TextMesh Pro's users. His name is Sith, and interestingly enough both of these features were requested actually weeks apart from each other, and yet they're actually extremely complementary, which is actually pretty cool. Now just in case you're not familiar with TextMesh Pro, what is TextMesh Pro? TextMesh Pro is the ultimate text solution for Unity. It's a replacement for all your different text components like TextMesh, GUI text, or basically the new UI text that's part of Unity 4.6. Now, TextMesh Pro does two things. First, it's an advanced text rendering engine. So if I select this text and I zoom into any portion of it, let's zoom into the word page, for example, you can see that as I zoom in, the outline and the text remains super clean and super sharp at any point size or resolution. And yet, most people, when they see pretty text like this, if it's unselected, they start to think, oh, look, there must be like a bazillion vertices and lots of triangles and so on and so forth. No, that's not the case. If I select it, you can see that each character is still rendered inside of a quad, which means from a performance point of view, there's no additional overhead to using the better text rendering system that TextMesh Pro offers. Now, there's another huge benefit to this advanced text rendering system, is that all these styling, meaning the shadow and the stroke and the gradient, all these things are dynamic. And let me show you that. So if I focus on the word page, for example, let me disable the vertex color and let me reset the material. In essence, the font that we're looking at, we're using one single font asset called Impact. If you look at the font, it's just plain white text with no styling to it. But because of the technique that TextMesh Pro uses to render the text, I can dynamically alter the text. So here I can dilate the text. Actually, let's turn on the gradient real quick. But I can dilate the text to make it skinnier or thicker. I can add a stroke dynamically and control the thickness. If I zoom in, let's see, to the end sign, and we look at the shadow, I can turn on underlay and move my offset left or right, below or above, and add, actually let's tweak the transparency of the shadow, make it more opaque a little bit, and add some softness to it. So basically all these different treatments are all dynamic. They end up being a material. So as a matter of fact, if I hit reset again to bring it back to its default value, cancel this basically gradient, vertex gradient, and I go here to my material preset. So I created, using the context menu, I can create new material duplicates. When I do that, let me select the object again. If I drag, let's say this impact, face, bevel, glow, whatever, I drag it here, you can see that now my text style has changed dramatically. You can see beveling on it, you can see a bump map, you can see a cool glow around it. So here are the beveling options. We've got lighting options, like I can control the orientation of the lighting. So this advanced text rendering system is incredibly powerful in terms of the flexibility that it gives you, in terms of the visual look that you can pull off on your text. And yet, most people would think, again, lots of vertices, lots of triangles. No, it's just a simple quad and you get amazing quality. But that's just half of what TextMesh Pro does. The second half is, let's zoom back out here to see our thing, is what good is rendering pretty text if you have very little control over it. So the second part of TextMesh Pro has to do with giving you better control over your text, and that's what we're going to focus on. So let's make this object go away. Let's enable this canvas to take a look at the alignment feature. And I'm going to select the TextMesh Pro object. As you can see here, we have a single block of text with a fair amount of text in there, right? And in terms of text alignment, up until now, alignment has always been a global thing, meaning I can align the text to the left, I can center align it, right align it, or even justify it in TextMesh Pro. And justify is basically flush on both ends of the margin. And with TextMesh Pro, I can also control the blend between character spacing and word spacing to fill in the gap or make it justified, right? That's pretty cool. But In the case of Sith, he needed a way to control alignment within a block of text. So for example, if you look at the titles that are in blue using the color tag, and it's actually using a size tag that makes them larger and the small cap tag to make it small cap, well, these are center justified, whereas the rest of the text is left justified. Well, I basically added a new feature, which is a new rich tag, which is called align. So if we wanted to justify the first paragraph, I would just go align equal justified. And now we've basically told TextMesh Pro, because we have the start align justified here and then the slash align there to tell it where it ends. Now we're controlling alignment for the first paragraph. So if I was to go center global or right, you can see that the titles or that first paragraph is controlled by the tag itself. And what's amazing about that feature is not necessarily the feature, but the fact that for years we've gone on without that type of functionality. It seems in hindsight so obvious that we would need this, and yet I didn't even think of it until Sith requested that feature. But no more. We now have it in TextMesh Pro, which gives you much better control. In terms of additional quick overview of the controls, obviously with TextMesh Pro, you can also control character spacing, line spacing, and paragraph spacing. You also have kerning control, so a lot more control over your text elements, to do exactly what you want. So let me reset real quick these things and move on to the next feature. Let's say you're having to work with a large amount of text, like this block of text here. And in the case of Sith, who's working on this amazing game called Ghost of a Tale, it looks like stunning. I encourage you to take a look at it. I presume he's got a fair amount of dialogue for his characters. And if we take a look at this gray area here, he's trying to basically fit a certain amount of text into a dialog box. And if the amount of text you're trying to fit is a little bit bigger than the container, then that's fine. I guess you could always use the auto sizing feature, which would shrink the font size to fit it in, and that could work. But if you're dealing with this amount of text, there is no way you can shrink it to fit in there, meaning you could, and you'd end up with like such a small point size that it would just look ridiculous going from one dialogue to the other with the point size, resizing. So he was looking for a better way to fit this entire text in a certain region. So obviously with Unity 4.6, we can, I've got the canvas here, I've got a panel, I added a scroll rec, and I can enable masking. And if we go in play mode, well, obviously we can, scroll through the text, right? So that works kind of nicely, for instructions or things in a game. But when you're dealing with dialogue, the scrolling thing doesn't necessarily work very well. So let's turn off this canvas here. And let's enable this one here to take a look at the other option. So one of the things that TextMesh Pro offers is there's a utility class called TextInfo. And this utility class has a bunch of substructures in it. One of them is called character info, and it's basically an array that has information about every single character in the block of text, including its position, what style it's using, i.e. like bold, italic, whatever, what vertex colors, and a bunch of stuff, and where its vertices are in the vertex array. Then there's another substructure called word info, which basically has information about every single word, including, and you could use that, for example, to highlight words for a reading app or something like a karaoke simulation or machine. Then there's another substructure called line info, which has information about every single line, including first and last character. And then lastly, there's another one called mesh info, which has information about the mesh, so you could further manipulate the vertices or vertex colors or whatever. But in the case of Sith, he was thinking about, let's select the TextMesh Pro object, he was thinking about, well, what if I could break up all these lines of text into, let's say we determined that we can fit 10 in this dialog box. Then he was thinking, well, I could grab the string and break it up, 10 lines at a time, and then, display 10 lines at a time. And the issue with that is when you start factoring in word wrapping, and then you start factoring in the tags and the size tags or bold, which affects how the wrapping is going to happen, it can get to be pretty messy and tricky to deal with it that way. Plus, you're doing a bunch of string operations and garbage collection and so on and so forth. And imagine that on different devices that have different resolutions, this container changes size, then your 10 lines may not be 10 lines on some other device. So the thought was, well, maybe it would be a lot easier if we could use the rect transform to define what should be displayed. So basically I added a new feature called Page, and what it does, it will basically display whatever it can in the container given its size, and then whatever else it can't display. If I go here, right now we're seeing page 0, but now we're seeing page 1. So now we can, through this property, choose what portion of the block of text is shown in this region. And that kind of worked pretty good until, as I started playing with it, I realized, well, look, I've got this title here, and then I guess this other title is like still on page 1. I'd want it on page 2. But since the block of text, again, if I disable this mode, if we look, the amount of text for the first block versus where I have the second title versus where I have the third one, I mean, the amount of text is different from one to the other. So I thought, well, look, we should add another feature, which is a page tag. So now if I scroll here and I go page, this basically, whoops, if I type it correctly, and I go in page mode. So now with this page tag or rich tag, I can tell TextMesh Pro where to break up this block of text. So using that feature, if we actually enable here, well, this button on and on. I'm using, again, Unity 4.6 with buttons, and the labels are done with TextMesh Pro. If I enter play mode, now we can see as I mouse over, the text, the vertex colors change. But if I go next, we're on the next page, next page, next page, or previous, previous. So now we can control basically what portions of our text is being displayed in the same container without doing any string manipulation whatsoever, because all we're controlling is what essentially triangles or quads are being shown, and the ones that are not visible are basically degenerated, so they're marked as degenerate, so they don't render. So this is an actually very efficient method to control the display. Now, another cool thing that was important is, well, what if instead of having these buttons, you want to automate the process? So I created this little Teletype script here. So instead of using the buttons, let's just hit play and see what happens. So now we can see that we're revealing the text one character at a time, still respecting this whole page concept within the same block of text. And as you're going to see, it's going to switch to page 2. I'm using a coroutine, page 1 I meant. So now it's switching from page to page to display the text, revealing, one letter at a time. And like I said, I'm using a coroutine, so you could change how fast it's doing it and so on and so forth. So if I stop it, and I go here and I change the size of the container and hit play again, you're going to see now that it's still going to do the page mode, but based on the new container size that I just defined. As a matter of fact, I could actually change character spacing while doing it midstream while it's revealing it, but I can change character spacing, and this pagination mode will still do what it's expected to do. The other thing that I had to add, let me reset it back to where it was so I can show that and go back to the 26-point size. The other thing that was kind of tricky is when you have a single block of text, if I go back to overflow mode, let's make the buttons go away because we don't want to see them right now. The next interesting portion was, well, alignment again, especially like the top, center, and bottom. So these align the text based on the container. So center, it's center justified in this smaller rect transform. It's bottom aligned in this smaller rect transform. But when you're dealing with pages, well, each block of text is each page is a different size. So I added actually the support. So now that when you're in page mode, even the alignment modes work. So right now we're seeing a portion of the container, but center justified, bottom justified. And if I change to page 1, for example, we're still bottom aligned or center or top. Or if I go to page, I think it's page 3 that has the next title, so bottom alignment. So now within pages, even the alignment works. And essentially, that's basically it for this video in terms of showing the new align rich tags and basically the new text overflow page mode. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to thank Sith for requesting these features, and don't forget to take a look at his Ghost of a Tale game. It looks amazing. As usual, thank you for watching. Should you have any comments or questions, please feel free to post. Thank you.